Hi there, it's Sarah from Ruffles and Rain Boots, and today I am sharing 3 easy ways to make some adorable felt gnomes. If you would like to make them with me, boop, stick around. As always, if you're with me, please like this video so I know you're here. Now, each of the supplies is going to vary by the gnome, but the pattern link is below. So we have a couple different hats and body styles for you to use, and a couple different easy ways to do it. But the hats are always the same in that you're going to cut 2, and you're going to have a starting and a stopping point for the sewn portion, whether you're sewing by hand with a sewing machine or if you're hot gluing it. So the very first one here is going to be the sweetest little easiest gnome we have, and that is the cone gnome with a hand sewn hat. So I love this method. I'm just using a blanket stitch to put this thing together. It's super easy. You don't have to be good at hand sewing. And then what I'm doing is I'm just stuffing a little bit of polyfill up into that turny point, the curved portion. The turny point, it's a technical term. So I'm just going to stuff a little bit of polyfill into the curved portion of the hat, and then I'm going to measure how much difference I have between whatever body base I'm using and the curve so that we can stuff that piece as well, because we want it to be like one fluid piece, and we also want it to withstand my 8-year-old. So there's that. So I'm just going to add a little more polyfill here until that's nice and fluffy. And then the first gnome uses a 7-inch styrofoam cone. Mine was all busted up from shipping. I got them from Amazon, so I'm going to cover it completely. And I used these Target Dollar Spot socks. There are 3 sets of socks in this little package for $3, which I thought was super bargain filled. So I'm just going to use one of these socks to cover this gnome. Now I'm going to pull that toe piece right into the center, and if I had to do it again, I would have glued it right down there at the bottom, but I didn't think of that, so I would do that. And then we're going to cover it 2/3 of the way and then cut off the top. In order to make the pattern sit flat, you're going to cut 2 slits on either side, and then you're going to glue down the front without pulling anything, and it will keep your pattern straight and pretty. And then you're going to glue down the back and do the same thing. And then once you have those down, you just pull back these tabs and biggity bam, your pattern is good. So we're going to cover those little tabs so they won't be seen anyway. All right, so I'm going to test fit my hat, and then you can measure what piece of fur and what size nose you're using. I'm using a 1-inch wood bead and a little tiny scrap of fur. So this is a cast off from a different project. It's about 1 inch by I would say 1/2 inch deep. So really tiny piece of fur. And I just wanted to let you know, this is like a perfect scrap buster project. These are great to include in gift baskets if you're delivering those for the holidays, or you're gonna deliver a nice little gift to your neighbors. These are so easy and inexpensive to make. Okay, so after you glue on the hat and cover those bead holes, I chose to make little feet, and all I did was cut a rectangle. I rounded off the front edges and then glued it all together. So you make 2 of these and then glue them flat, and it gives it just a little bit of dimension. I glued it right to the bottom, and that's it for this first little guy. So the second little guy little girl also has a hand sewn hat, and this time I'm using a paper mache cone. So I have a lot of people who tell me they can't find one or the other type of cone, so I'm just gonna share every way to make these. And that is using the pattern piece. All you have to do is wrap the paper mache cone with this pattern piece. It's super easy, just a little bit of hot glue. Now this whole gnome will only take you about 5 minutes if you also hot glue the hat, and which I may actually be doing a live version of this hot glue gnome, so watch for that here. But all I did was I took the bottom, I glued it down so that everything is solid and your 8-year-old can play with it, and then I pulled a little too far on one little section here, so I'm just going to cut it off and make it even. Ta-doo! Now we're going to put it onto our cone, or put our hat onto our cone, and be sure to line up those seams in the back. I took the measurement between the hat and the body, and I just cut 2 fabric rectangles from the same felt of the body. I hot glued the long edge, leaving about 1/2 inch at the bottom, and then I put a little bead right there at the bottom. put a whole bunch of hot glue in that one. It's a little excessive on the hot glue, Sarah. Okay, we didn't need that much, but hey, at least I didn't burn myself. We're going to repeat that for the second arm, and now you have 2 little arms. Hello, Norms. Okay, so now we're going to lift up the hat, put the seam of the arm at the back, and then just hot glue it directly to the body. I was very generous with my hot glue that day. I probably burned myself. I made these back in August. Very, very Christmassy. But for this one, I wanted a little gal gnome, a little girl gnome, a little woman gnome, a little female gnome, a little queen gnome. So I just used 2 little tiny scraps. I mean, these are about 1/2 of an inch scrap. And I put them onto the body, covered them up. You can see here, I'm gonna cover it up directly by putting the glue on the hat and placing it on top so that you don't see the fabric part of the fur, right? So just push that down. And then I'm going to glue down the back of the hat on both sides. There you go. I brushed out her adorable little tiny pigtails, and I put on a little piece of embroidery thread. Now you can take the time to braid these. I did not do that. I did, however, add a little tiny bit of a holly decoration on her hat and called her done. Now this is what I find to be the easiest one, and that is with the sewing machine. This is also like, it's just so plush. So if you can sew a straight line, sew per the pattern, and then snip off anything that is wonky afterwards. And then here I'm just cutting the base and the bottom. So you can see I have 2 pieces. I put the right sides of the base together. I pin it incorrectly, and then I take it to my sewing machine. Ooh, I just poked myself. I sew a straight line with about 1/2 inch inseam or 1/2 inch hem, and then I place, don't turn it inside out, just place the bottom on and then pin. Now if you're new to sewing, it's okay. Go slowly on this part. Just turn it a little bit, move the fabric, and you're done. When you turn it inside out, you rub the hem or rub the seam in between your fingers, and it'll sit perfectly flat. See? Woohoo! Okay, so now's the fun part. I'm using poly beads, those little plastic pellets, and filling it about 1/3 of the way full. I then tamp them down by dropping it on the table, which I find to be a fun pastime. Then I rip apart polyfill into smaller sections. I stuff it in, I drop it, I fill it, I drop it, and then I just move around the seam to make sure I'm not filling it too much, because I do want that to sit flat. And then once I have it, here's your little body. It's very solid, by the way. It's very solid. It will withstand my 8-year-old. And because I sewed it, I choose to add a little button here. These you can get on Etsy with your shop name, or made with love, or handmade by Cora, or whatever you want. And then all I'm doing is adding a little bit more polyfill to make sure I have that distance between the hat and the body. I'm using about a 1x1 or 1.5 by 1 inch piece of fur for a bit of a larger beard here, and securing it against the body of the gnome. And then placing on my hat in order to put the nose on where I want it. And again, we're just going to lift up those flaps if you're using a bead, and we want to glue them down to cover the holes. I tucked a little bit extra polyfill in the back because I wanted to be super plush. I mean, he's rotund, this guy, because I was going to put a nice fur plush. It's called plush fur, and I'm using it as a trim here. And I just put it all the way around on the 2 tails. Isn't he cute? Now you can stop there, but you know, I think things need a bell from time to time. So I'm tying a bell onto some embroidery thread, and I put it on this really large needle. And I don't know if it's called an embroidery needle or a darning needle or a tapestry needle, but anyway, just pulled it right out through the hat, and then I tied a knot. I cut off right past the knot, and then I pulled the bell down, and it sucks that knot right inside. And then you just move the felt around with your finger, and it hides it. Biggity bam, you're done. And now you have 3 absolutely adorable gnomes that don't take much work. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I am so happy that you're here watching with me. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe to Ruffles and Rainboots.